Hey, what's up? It's Taylor Gray, Ezra Bridger from Star Wars Rebels, Spectre 6, transmitting from the Ghost, myself and the entire Ghost crew. That's Kanan, Hera, Zeb, Sabine, and Chopper. Yeah, I should have said Chopper first. We hear that you host a Star Wars podcast in New Orleans, Nolans, Who Dat Jedi, and that you guys have hit 100 episodes. So that's something awesome to celebrate. Congratulations to you guys. That is awesome. I can't wait to check out the podcast. I want to thank you for being a part of our Star Wars family and adding so much positivity and goodness to it. Because that's what makes Star Wars so cool, is all of us who are part of it, from fans of the shows to cast members to creators. We all love this amazing thing that is Star Wars. So thank you for being a part of our family.
Welcome to another episode, not just another episode, as you heard in the intro, our 100th episode of the Who Dat Jedi podcast. With me as always is Dave and Fredo. Can you guys believe this crap?
Woo!
Nope.
I can believe it.
How can we found 100 episodes to talk about something? I mean, we must be like three of the people most full of crap on the planet. I don't know. But yeah, so 100th episode. And as we were recording it, it's weird because the sun is coming through my window because we're recording this in the morning of New Year's Eve. So hopefully everybody will have a wonderful New Year's. But yeah, 100 episodes. And that intro that you heard, that was Taylor Gray himself, Ezra Bridger. We having comms coming through. And that was very cool. That was a surprise from Dave's Kate, right?
Indeed, yes. She surprised all of us with that. So I did not even know that he was out there. Somebody else has joined?
I think it's Fredo because he was having issues.
Yeah, Cops can say in 2021.
So Fredo sounds like he's in an undisclosed location. That's okay. So, well, to add to this story, we got a text message. Dave and Fredo and I got a text message, and they knew who it was from. I realized last night I do not have Kate's phone number because I'm sitting here trying to figure out who sent this kind of cryptic. And if you don't know it's Kate, it sounds kind of stalkerish, text message. And so with a link to click on something, and I've worked for Google, and now I work for Salesforce, and security sends us emails all the time trying to trick us into, clicking on links, and, it's a phishing, so I'm really hesitant to click on a link. So I'm like trying to figure out who sent this. And then, and Fredo finally says Kate. And I was like, oh, okay. I guess if I've ever messaged Kate, it's been on Twitter. So anyway, so now I have Kate's phone number, and it was very sweet. It was very, very cool. So, but yeah, at first I was like, who's stalking us?
Yeah, that was a funny story, but, no, like, that was a really nice surprise. And it's good to commemorate 100 because honestly, there's so many podcasts out there, right? I don't necessarily think that what we're doing here is special in any way in that regard because there's just so many people out there that are doing this sort of thing. But 100 kind of is special because it does mean that we've been at it for a while, and it does mean that we haven't gotten tired of one another, and that we're still enjoying doing this.
Well, and I remember you and I having this discussion at Zony Mash and pre-pandemic, and my whole reason for wanting to do this was because I needed a creative outlet. When I lived in Nebraska, I was in a band, and I was going to rehearsals all the time, and I had a creative, a really regular creative outlet. And I needed something new. And so I was like, everybody else does a podcast. Why couldn't we? So Dave and I were talking about this, and we're like, yeah, Fredo would be great to be a part of it. So we roped him into this. And honestly, the whole idea was for three friends just to sit around a table and BS about Star Wars. And I guess that's what we do for 100 episodes. So,
We started it with the to coincide with the launch of the Mandalorian.
yeah, that was the
Episode 1.
yeah, we had
So it feels. Oh, go ahead.
no, yeah, we had instant material, because the Mandalorian was coming out and all the Disney Plus stuff. And we haven't, I don't think hopefully, in the coming year, we'll give ourselves a little bit more wiggle room to nerd out a little bit beyond Star Wars, even though there's going to be a lot of Star Wars content. I mean, we got into the Marvel stuff and I thought kind of diversified us a little bit. But the whole thing was just to be, just sit around and kind of nerd out. So
I think like the best, like, again, this might be where I invite people to like share their experiences with our shows and give us some feedback where what they've liked hearing the most. But like for me personally, it's usually when we have guests on, and we get to talk to somebody with a different experience, or somebody that is doing something that's really sort of interesting and cool, and worth highlighting. And so, yeah, I'm all about us continuing to have guests. But again, if anybody out there has any sort of feedback for us, we sure like hearing it.
Fredo, I think we're working on an echo here with your phone and your computer. And of course, this did actually start out with us sitting around my table. And then when the pandemic hit, we had to start relying on technology. And we've, just like everybody. So we've been going to Zoom school, well, not Zoom, Google Meet, Zoom.
Yeah.
But
Dealing with the realities of technology, as everybody else has, just hitting ourselves against the wall.
So tonight, what we're going to be doing tonight, well, I guess it's nighttime somewhere, but what this episode is going to be, it's kind of funny because our first episode was about Mandalorian first episode, and God, that seems like forever ago. But we're going to do a group watch of the Book of Boba Fett first episode. Now we've all watched it. And so we decided we just watch it together here. And so if you have a Disney Plus account, you can watch it along with us. What we're going to do is we're going to do some trivia here in a second because it wouldn't be our podcast without some Star Wars trivia. But you can get Disney Plus kind of queued up in the Book of Boba Fett, the first episode, right where it says, after all the cool stylized helmets go by, it says Star Wars in that nice stylized thing. It's about 21 seconds in, I suppose. So if you want to get there, then we can all hit play together and we can just react to what we saw. But let's do some trivia first of all. And I'll grab 3 cards. And let's see, I'll have to hold them out far away because I don't have my glasses. My old man glasses. Okay. So Dave, you're first. Who orders the transmission generator checked when communications are disrupted on Naboo? That's a toughie. Who orders the transmission generator checked when communications are disrupted on Naboo?
Well, it was that big group of politicians and so forth just sitting around, and they were trying to figure out. And I know the old guy was like, "A communications disruption can mean only one thing: invasion." But I still don't know who actually asked. I'm going to say Padme.
It is Captain Panaka.
Ah,
I had no idea. I knew what you were talking about. Yeah, with I can even tell you that the old guy was C.O. Bibble. I can tell you that. But I couldn't tell you who ordered the transmission generator checked. Wow. That was kind of a BS question, but oh well. It's only BS if you don't know the answer to it. Fredo, who accurately predicts that little droid is going to cause me a lot of trouble?
Oh, that sounds like something C-3PO might say. Oh, wait, no. It's Luke.
One of those answers is correct.
I'll go with Luke.
It is Luke Skywalker. Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah, I have to think about it for a moment, and it's got like, no. Because at first I thought that's something 3P might have said in episode 1, but then I realized, no, it's Luke in episode 4.
All right. So for me, who operates the manual release for the Millennium Falcon's landing claw? Man, I got the easy one of the three of us. Who operates the manual release for the Millennium Falcon's landing claw? That would be Chewbacca in Empire Strikes Back. Yes. Ding, 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 ding. Hooray. So, cool. Just right before Boba Fett starts chasing him down. So that's a nice little segue here.
Yeah.
But real quick though, before we start Book of Boba Fett, anybody get any cool Star Wars stuff for Christmas?
Yep.
I got a few books mostly for Star Wars. I think I mentioned I got the Homer, the epic poem of Star Wars. I also got the next book in the High Republic series, which I hadn't picked up, so I got that as a present. So I'm glad with that.
Cool. Dave?
I got the Thrawn Ascendancy trilogy. So that's pretty cool because I hadn't read any of those yet, and I enjoyed the Thrawn books, so that's cool. And then, of course, my son got a double-sided lightsaber, so I'm jealous of him. But
Nice.
it's really neat too. It's actually, it's one of the kid ones, but so it's not like one of the $200 Galaxy Edge things, but you can disassemble the thing and like split it in half and stuff, and so like it's perfect for lightsaber duels. I highly recommend the Darth Maul double-sided lightsaber.
So you can like reenact, cutting the lightsaber in half and then, kicking your son off the porch, so it's like he's going down the react. So I got a couple pieces of artwork in a previous episode. We talked about the 13th floor, I believe, and they have World War II images that they put Star Wars stuff on. So this one's a TIE fighter being loaded onto a boat, which is really cool. And then my brother-in-law and sister-in-law brought me back from Hawaii when they went and visited. It's just a piece of artwork. It's on a piece of wood, and it's a stormtrooper carrying a surfboard. So it's kind of cool. But anyway, so
also I would be remiss if I didn't mention that my kids also got me a Star Wars t-shirt and some Star Wars socks. So like I don't want to leave them out of that.
Bravo.
Yeah.
No, that's important stuff. You'll be wearing all that throughout the year.
All right, so I think it's about time to start the Book of Boba Fett commentary. And so, like I said, everybody get about 21 seconds in. It's right where it says Star Wars and that neat little stylized stuff, right before the episode starts. So on the count of 3, hit play. So 3, 2, 1, play.
Star Wars.
And
by the way,
no, go ahead, Fredo.
No, just going to ask as we get started. Have you seen any of the commentary, any of the stuff that's been said around? Because it seems like, unlike The Mandalorian, the Book of Boba Fett has started out with far more energetic response or reaction from fans.
Energetic is an interesting way of putting it because I would call it maybe a little divided.
Yeah, that's kind of what I meant. It's it's very much passionate, to be kind.
So here we are. We're seeing Boba Fett in the Bacta tank. I will say I find it interesting, and we'll talk about it maybe at the end here. My initial reaction after watching this, and first of all, I love all these flashbacks to Camino and Geonosis. I thought that was awesome. And I don't know, is this like a different kid, or is that Daniel Logan with some different footage that we've never seen before, or did they film new footage?
I think that's new because it's shot from a different angle. It's shot to recreate the final shot we get of Daniel in episode 2, but it's not the same. But not shot from the same angle, not seen the same way. So,
but now we see him.
I would love to know if it was unused footage. Yeah.
Sorry, now we see him in the Sarlacc pit. So we go straight to the thing that everybody wanted to know right off the get go, and
Mhm.
the thing that
Right.
threw
I
me
think this
off
was.
here was a stormtrooper. A
Yeah,
stormtrooper
you're
in the
not expecting
Sarlacc.
that.
I think this was clever. That this was kind of what everybody's big question was, right? Like, oh, what do I want to see? I want to see him get out of the Sarlacc pit. Well, you're getting that within about a minute,
Hmm.
and so we're gonna get that out of the way, and then we're gonna move on to telling a story.
Right, because in many ways, even though it's been the most, one of the most, biggest questions that the fan base has had for decades, it's really the least important, interesting thing about this story. We know it's got to happen, but at the same time, we need to move past it in order to get to the story we want to get at. By the way, I love the shots of the Java's barge behind them
Yeah. And by the way,
because
did
it did.
the funny thing that I have heard people wondering is did they was Patton Oswald's filibuster uh, the inspiration for how Boba Fett escaped the Sarlacc pit? Have you ever heard that from Parks and Rec?
Yeah, I have, but then I also want to say that that's not really the first time that that's been suggested. If I recall correctly, there was a comic book, the one back when Star Wars was in the on the Dark Horse Comics imprint that showed similar in nature. A shot of Boba Fett basically punching his way out of the Sarlacc pit and standing covered in all the goop and whatnot, similar to what Patton Oswalt suggested.
So this is good continuity when the Jawas are stripping of his armor, which is
Mm-hmm.
we knew from the Mandalorian that they had somehow come into possession of his armor, and
And
so we
Jawas
get
are
to see how that happened. Yep, dude, don't swear. I gotta. Then I have to produce more.
sorry.
But
However, it is funny that it's like the Mandalorian and now the Book of Boba Fett. They've done two things. One, they've like given more, I guess, respect to the Tusken Raiders, even though we'll talk about it here in a little
Mm-hmm.
bit. But they've also made Jawas like they've dropped Jawas down a couple pegs. You know, they've
oh yeah,
because the Jawas were just kind of cute, and they were just running their business, in the previous stuff, and now they're just sorry, they're jerks. So,
Well, they're creatures of the desert. They're creatures of very harsh environments where, if something's valuable and it can help you, you take it. Much in the same way as the Tuscans are currently taking Boba. You know, to them, there's a value to be extracted from his life or his remains. So they're going to do that. And that's much in the same way as a lot of cultures in harsh environments.
I think so much of this, and I think like the biggest parallel when George created them originally was like well the harsh natives like from the old westerns,
right.
Mm-hmm.
um, and I think like that was kind of an outdated mode of thinking. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the whatever his source material was, which again was probably these older westerns. Um, that motif existed and he's drawing from it, but it was kind of a bad motif to draw from in the first place because it was a very one-sided view of those relationships. And
Mm-hmm.
as we've gotten, hopefully society has moved forward, we've come to understand um, that those old westerns were told from the point of view of the quote unquote victors, and
Mm-hmm.
like you got a very one-sided view of things. And so what the newer Star Wars that we've seen, the new version of the Tusken Raiders that we've seen, um, has been very much more nuanced. And again, that's a little bit more. Um, Again, if the parallel is Native Americans here, or indigenous peoples anywhere in the world, um, it's very much appreciated by me personally. I've always been sort of
Hmm.
drawn to those stories anyway. When I was younger, I read an entire book series, and the author's name was Don Goldsmith, if you want to look him up. And it was told, and they told stories of Native American peoples during the time that settlement was beginning to occur in the West, but it was all told from their perspective.
Hmm.
And so I got a lot of insight into Native people from those books, and again, they're fictional accounts, but you can still draw a lot from them, I think, um, and a lot of this stuff rings true,
Hmm.
especially early on here, like where he's getting beat on by these kids. That's on point. That's a thing that would occur in a lot of different cultures where you take in a prisoner and the kids were trying to prove themselves. Like I can be a great warrior. I can be a great
Hmm.
warrior too. Like that's the idea present in that. And so when somebody's tied up, it's a chance for you to kind of, oh look, see, I'm hitting this guy with my stick and I'm tough, right? Um, you're not really fooling anybody, but that's a thing that would go on. And again, it's kind of like becoming a warrior with the training wheels on.
Yeah.
Hmm.
By the way,
So that
keep going, Dave. Sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, so that just rings really true, and then we're going to see that get paid off here in a few more minutes, where ultimately what happens with him and the young child and how he saves the young child.
So 8 minutes in, and we finally get our first bit of dialogue. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a couple technical things that are going on here that I found really interesting. First of all, there were two shots that Rodriguez used a point of view. You're seeing it from the perspective of Boba Fett, and one was the visor shot, which was really cool. So literally through Boba Fett's eyes, and then the other one when he's getting drugged by the banthas, another point of view shot. I just find some interesting choices because we've never gotten anything like that in Star Wars before. By the way, you guys know who
It makes
voiced the Rodian here?
oh,
Sam Witwer.
He's a jerk,
oh,
another jerk.
Yeah, the Rodian, not Sam Witwer. Yeah.
yeah. I was gonna say that's that's that first POV shots. It kind of just reinforces the idea that this is the book of Boba Fett, meaning the story as perceived as told by Boba Fett. So maybe we got to keep an eye on how many more of those shots we'll get as the series goes along, just to see how often we get put into Boba's point of view for these events as they're happening. Because we kind of got some over the head, over the shoulder shots, and through his eye shots. So it'll be good to see. And to Dave's point, actually, I agree. It's one of the things that I really like about just in terms of the costuming in this episode, because it would have been rather easy and simply just the color palette and sensibilities that George used in both A New Hope and Attack of the Clones for the Tusken. But the reality here is you get to see a lot more color, nuance, and different decorations and different outfits for them that we haven't seen before.
Well, and it might, Brittany and I were talking about that. Is like, what up with the black, robes, and that's
Yeah.
not what he's. Well, anyway, but what's up with and it's like, I mean, different tribe of of Tuscans.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
and these guys are a little bit more aggressive and than the ones that Din Djarin was talking to and friends with. But I don't know. It is really cool. They've, like you said, it's I mean, you can almost say that A New Hope was that very narrow, stereotypical,
Cowboys and Indians.
prejudicial, just, and then wow, what we've learned, because the world has gotten smaller, but anyway, the thing that was kind of interesting is this whole episode, it's like they've put all the flashbacks, it seems like, up front, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there might be more coming up, and I think that's So I found it an interesting. They were faced with a choice. It's like, do we sprinkle these in as we go, or do we let's just address all of it up front? You know, A, how'd he get out of the Sarlacc pit? B, how'd he come to be friends with Tusken Raiders? And then we can move on with the story. Because I mean, unpopular opinion, I was underwhelmed by this episode. And I think part of it, we've talked about, you know, expectations and all that. I think I had way too high of expectations. It just because the things you heard, I mean, there were reports that said that the trailer was, you're only seeing from the first half of the first episode because you'd get spoiled for a lot of things. And I heard rumors of a cameo that was coming and things like that. So you're kind of, my expectations were high. So it was my own fault. But I got done with it. And I was like, it was nice, you know, but it was like, that's it. And I wonder if it's because of all the flashbacks just right up front. I don't know. What were your guys' initial reaction when you saw it?
I think I kind of went with, it's more or less what I expected for the first episode, just because there are so many questions. This isn't like The Mandalorian's first episode where we're introduced to a new character, a new dynamic. This is a character that we're somewhat familiar with, and it's more about answering those age-old questions. So, and even then, we had some idea of where he was going to start because we saw him in season 2 of The Mandalorian. We saw that final scene at the end that revealed where he was going to go. So we kind of had some idea of where this was going to start. So it was a different dynamic to Mandalorian Episode 1, Season 1.
Yeah, I think we talked about there needing to be kind of a point, and so we're not there yet where we don't understand what the point of all this is going to be eventually. And so again, that's still to be determined in terms of grading everything. I do think it did a lot of the dirty work that needed to be done. We needed to know more about, like, how did he even show up in The Mandalorian while we're finding those things out here. And so yeah, I mean, it probably had the toughest job of any of the episodes that we're going to see, because it had to try to balance this new story, which is, again, this is how he sort of takes over the throne, or who knows where that will end. He may not be on the throne by the end of this, but that's basically the narrative that we're trying to tell. And so they're balancing that against these sort of requirements of, well, how did we even get to this point? And I thought they did a good job. I thought the flashbacks are sort of a necessary evil. And again, at least they did split them up, because you had most of this backstory stuff at the very beginning, and then now you've got the I guess, where he's dealing with all these the politics of the throne. And then by the end of the episode, we're back into flashback mode.
And I'm not saying that I didn't enjoy it. I said I was underwhelmed, and I'm not also going to be like this guy. Kate sent us all, this tweet. The guy says, as expected, the Book of Boba Fett reaffirms how Disney Star Wars is just big budget fan fiction. They turned a ruthless bounty hunter into a respectful crime lord with a heart of gold who talks like an MCU character. Who in the world thought that was a good idea? I'm like, I mean, wow, you're passing judgment after 38 minutes, and I'm pretty sure he probably had that written for like about 6 months and just was waiting to hit send on the tweet. Anyway, but I
mean, if we want to get into some of the critiques, I think they're ridiculous. I saw one where somebody said if Robert Rodriguez, a younger Robert Rodriguez, saw the action sequence upcoming in the street where he's fighting, where they're trapped by the dudes with the shields. If younger Robert had seen that, he would kick his own butt, And I'm like, I had no qualms at all with a lot of the action in this. It was fine. There was nothing about it that stood out to me as being bad.
By the way,
Hmm.
before we get to that scene, I mean,
Yeah.
so the mayor of Mos Espa sent his like major domo to and brought no offerings to Boba Fett, and then asked for so he asked for offerings to the mayor. So this is seeming like I think we're setting up who Boba Fett's major or first big foe is going to be is the mayor of Mos Espa. We come to find out that that big
Right.
city that we saw in the trailer is Mos Espa, which I found is interesting. Because
Yeah,
apparently
because
there are only three cities. There are
There
only three cities in all of Tatooine. It's Mos Eisley. Oh, four: Mos Eisley, Anchorhead, Mos Espa, and Mos Pelgo. That's it.
So what about Tachi? Tachi Station.
Tashi Station is a building in Anchorhead.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you.
He's going to
Uh,
Tashi Station to
no,
pick up some power converters. That's like going to AutoZone to get some, some windshield wipers.
but by the way, you did see Mark Hamill finally made it to a station named Tashi.
No.
I'll have to share that with you if I find it. Um, yeah, it's interesting that the mayor's already. I mean, clearly there's a power vacuum after Bib's death, well, after Jabba's death, and then after Bib's death, and so everybody's trying to put themselves in the new pyramids, in the new scheme, as to try to put themselves as high as they can. And we see that Boba Fett choosing a different path than what was accepted by everybody. It's interesting. Fennec Shand is telling him, look, you should kill this guy. And even the droid that is with, it's like, look, Jabba would have tortured these guys. It's like, nope, I'm going to hire the two Gamorrean guards. No, I'm going to hire them. And Fennec's like, you should be carried out on the street on a litter. And he's like, I can walk. But so he's struggling with the expectations of the image that they're supposed to be having, because everybody thinks the only way to be a crime boss is the way that Jabba did it. And
So
we're going to see that's going to get him into trouble.
I gotta back up, and because we saw something walking through the streets of Mos Espa that actually took me out of the episode for a second, and it was I wasn't expecting it to. And those are the Boston Electronics, or the Boston what is it, the whole. It's Boston. Is it Boston Electronics where they do all the robots, and there was the robot dogs, and so those were the actual, you see them. They call them Spot, I think, but they try to kick them over and everything. And it was weird because it was the first time in Star Wars that we saw a real life thing in that universe. You know what I mean? The land speeder, yes, was a car, but you don't see a land speeder driving down the road, in your city. Here we've seen these Boston Electronics, robots, and it's really cool idea to implement them into the show, but it just took me, it was like the first time where it was like, whoa, something from our universe is in that universe, and it was like weird. But then later that was washed away once I saw Max Rebo has a gig again. So that's awesome.
Yeah, that was exciting to see Max teaming up with one of the dudes from the cantina.
And there's the droid. There's the droid who used to pilot the thing in Star Tours, who now is the DJ at Disney World. In Oga's Cantina, I believe. That droid's in there as well.
Yeah. So. So circling back to Fredo's point about the earlier scene with the Gamorreans, you're going to see the payoff of that, right? That decision. She said that, you can't have these guys work for you. And he saw the value in having them around because of their loyalty. And his decision ultimately gets proven to be the correct one here. Unless we find something out later about, them betraying him or whatever, but they swing into action. And again, I thought that was one of the effective scenes with, and the immediate part before that where they're doing the back and forth about who needs to pay whom, and because that would go on. Now
Right.
again, like now, see, like to me, none of this. I don't have a problem with any of this, and in fact, a lot of just revisiting this, I'm just sort of marveling out of the construction of a lot of these scenes.
I think one of the things I think the thing that takes me, it's kind of like Django and Obi-Wan's fight on Kamino. We don't typically see fisticuffs in Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just
It's
kind of
usually acrobatic.
weird. Like when he uses his flamethrower and he uses the rocket a little bit later to vaporize a guy, that's all. But like the fisticuffs here, it's just kind of odd. I'm not going to say it's bad or it's good. It's just it's like seeing the Boston Electronics dogs walking around. It's just like, you know. And then some of it
But I
is
think, but I
it's
think
also like this
in this
last scene
instance,
right here with the very slow, swing of the axe. It was just kind of, I don't know, seemed weird.
yeah, I was going to say that this is why you did hire Robert Rodriguez for this particular project, though. If you've ever seen stuff like Desperado, From Dusk Till Dawn, the mariachi movies, he's very good at making action scenes that are in close quarters, very hand to hand. Because I mean, even with guns, as in Desperado or El Mariachi, he's very good at doing that. So you got somebody who's very good at that particular type of action. So that's the aim of the Book of Boba Fett, because we're not expecting to have lightsabers in this story. We're not expecting to have Force users in this story. So it's going to be way more grounded, I think, than any project in Star Wars besides maybe Solo, which even then had piloting and flying action sequences. I don't know if we're going to have too many of those. So it's going to be interesting to see how they deliver on action that's not the traditional quote-unquote Star Wars action that we are accustomed to expect in any movie or project. Because
I mean,
ultimately, at some point, we expect Jedi to turn up.
this whole sequence actually seems a little bit more Indiana Jones-ish, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
from the get-go, when they all jump down and start, circling Fennec and Boba to the parkour thing that's going on here right now. This all seems very Indiana Jones-ish, which again, I don't have a problem with. Just saying that it's odd. So if people and when people see something that doesn't quite fit, their first reaction is, I don't like it.
Right. And I think that's part of the good thing of the various of this project, of the fact that we're going to get different Star Wars projects from Disney Plus, is the fact that we're going to get different, views of what Star Wars is. One question I did have: so the episode begins with Boba Fett in the Bacta tank, and Fennec cuts his session short in order for him to begin getting the tributes from all the emissaries. And now we're seeing the Gamorrean guards putting him back in there, which is a great mechanism for the flashbacks. He's even saying his dreams are coming back. So there's a presumption there that as his body is healing, his mind is, healing and processing a lot of what's happened to him. So that's how we're getting the flashbacks. But I guess my question is this: why was he in the Bacta tank initially? Did he go someplace and have something, or is this old wound that he's trying to heal and and get patched up from?
Yeah, I mean, he was pretty scarred up and everything.
To start with.
So, I'm sure it's probably he finally now has the means to actually do therapy.
Yeah.
But and it's
it's
obvious he's very
to.
weak, because just a couple of those shocks and he was like almost dead. But so
I really think that's how the storytelling intent there is simply that he now has the means to heal some of these wounds that he suffered. And I think it's an effective way to handle the flashbacks too. And again, it's always going to be a little awkward trying to figure out a way to do it that doesn't feel forced. But
so what gives
this
with
is all good stuff.
What about this scene here? We're coming up on the I guess the farmstead, not the farmstead, but a farmstead that is being.
Did you think it was the Farmstead for one moment?
What's that?
Did you think it was the Farmstead for a moment?
I actually
and then
it
wait a
looked
minute.
more like Obi-Wan's hut.
Mhm.
But it's neither. But we see now they're putting some logo. They're tagging the building. I'm just trying to figure out what they were. I guess what are we saying here? Are these the guys from the Cobb Vanth episode? You know, that were trying to take power in Mos Pelgo right after the Death Star blew up.
It might be because this would be that time period. I mean, this is after Return of the Jedi. Boba is in the desert, so we would expect that this might be members of that crime gang that was looking to take over Mos Pelgo. That eventually Cobb Vance will depose using Boba's armor. So it would make sense that they're involved in at least tangentially in this story.
And by the way, you knew that this eventually this Tusken kid was going to get his butt whooped because he's a little jerk. So, just saying.
Yeah, well, I like the rock thing here as a means of collecting water. It would make sense that it would be kind of low tech for them. Interesting that they saw this raid occur by these bandits and didn't try to take advantage of the situation and collect water there. Maybe the child didn't have the authority to make that kind of a choice, or wasn't brave enough, or what
Or
have
is
you.
it a nobility thing? It's not. It's not.
It's an interesting thing, because when we're introduced to Tuskens in the original Star Wars, they're these mindless creatures and everything, and you don't want to venture too far away because they'll hurt you, or and yet you see there's somebody in a very vulnerable state, having just been raided by these bandits, and they don't try to take anything from the situation. I find it interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Like it here, Boba grabs the stick as he gets swung at. Yeah, you knew it was going to go bad. Anyway, Fredo.
No, I was going to say, and it's. I was surprised that this is what they were doing. This is why they were having Boba and the same with Rodian digging in the sand, is digging for these rocks that either absorb or trap water. Because it seems rather ineffective, but then it makes sense. That's why they kept them alive initially, was to help them find out the greatest resource they can find.
And I gotta say that when the Tusken kid starts pouring out the water, all I saw was the three amigos. When they're riding through and they have run out of water in their canteen, but Chevy Chase is just guzzling and spitting it out and dumping it. I'm waiting for him to find the singing bush here in a second. But anyway, I'm here for the jokes. However, I will say a little criticism. It's like, did we need this much digging in the sand time for this first episode? You know what I mean? It's like, you always hear, it's interesting. You always hear about directors always talking about, making cuts to kind of keep things moving. And, I don't know. Of course, now we're getting into the thing where this was kind of funny. Whatever this creature is that
I know
that actually
so crazy looking. I love it.
Britt said it's like this is out of Clash of the Titans.
Yeah, it is.
And it also looks very stop motiony. This is actually some not great special effects.
Oh, I love
from ILM.
I love it.
When the thing starts moving around, I don't know.
It's such a departure. And again, when we talk about, you said, the rooftop action sequences were a departure. This is a departure. It's like, yeah, Yeah, man. Give me weirdness. Give me stuff I haven't seen before. And again, I know that we always have you got to walk that line between it being Star Warsy and not Star Warsy. Um, but I had a creature attack is very Star Wars.
And,
So the
and
fact that it's such
yeah,
a
so
weird looking throwback is to me is just a huge bonus.
yeah. At first, I thought it's like when I saw the claw, I'm like, did they just find a great dragon?
That's what I
Yeah,
thought
But
too.
then,
yeah. And he subverted expectations, giving you this weird mofo.
yeah,
It's like I said,
because
all of a
this is
sudden
not
we're in
something
Mortal
that,
Kombat. It's like,
yeah, Goro round one fight. No, because at first I saw it and I went, okay, what the heck is this? And then, like, I've never seen, again, we've never seen anything like this in any Star Wars movie, let alone one in Tatooine. Because I'm like, how much, for a arid planet where water is so precious, it sustains a heck of a lot of life. And so that kind of made me stop for a moment. But it's it's wonderful. It's wonderful throwback to the serialized Ray Harryhausen version that Star Wars always began as. That's
And
why we
yeah,
get all those creature moments in every Star Wars property. At some point, every Star Wars property has to have an ugly creature moment, and
find
this
it
is it for Boba Fett.
find it interesting that he kills the creature in the same manner that Princess Leia kills Jabba the Hutt. And now I need to go back and watch
Mm-hmm.
Return of the Jedi and see, did Boba Fett fall in the Sarlacc pit before Jabba died or after?
well, I think he was engaged at minimum during that. He was not in the uh, he was not in the general vicinity of Leia when that was going on.
But then
But he may have heard about it. Surely.
he lets the
By the way,
kid take all the credit for killing the creature. That's, I mean, we're seeing that Boba Fett is not a dumb person.
And likewise,
yeah,
the chief of the tribe is not dumb.
Yeah, he realizes.
yeah.
He
Yeah.
knows right away.
By the way, why did he just bring the head? I know it's a heavy beast, and I'm like, okay, you could have brought something else. What are we going to do with just the head? We can't make. What are we going to do? Make soup out of it? Monster head soup? We were joking about this as we were watching. Me and my bros like, okay, great, and you get an eyeball, and you get an eyeball, and I'm gonna get a bit of tongue, and you
That
know,
didn't sound good, Fredo.
Well, like you can assume, we can presume that they'll circle back for the body if they want any fresh
yeah,
meat.
yeah, and it's more about the trophy element at this point, and
Hmm.
this moment right here where the chieftain goes, okay, you recognized and you gave him the credit, and
Well, and
here you go.
this actually gets into, Boba Fett's line of, I intend to rule with respect. And
Right.
is this something that he learned at this moment? Because
Possibly.
from the Tuscan chieftain, saying, all right, you've earned my respect, so now, we'll work together. Because I don't think that's how Boba
Yeah.
Fett has, it's not the way he performed in the Clone Wars. That's not how he, he's always
That
been, so anyway, I think this
that
is
may
probably
not
that learning moment.
that may not be the only learning moment that we see, and I kind of hope that it
Mhm.
isn't. But it would certainly qualify for like a potential outcome that could change a person's viewpoint on such matters.
And it goes back to a lot that criticism that you read earlier, Aaron, about how some Star Wars fans are upset about the character of Boba Fett we're seeing here. I mean, you're like, wait a minute, this is a character who we know has gone through some serious life-changing stuff in the years since we last saw him.
I want to
We know that
remind,
he's no longer the same.
yeah, and I want to remind that
Huh?
guy and everybody that Ice-T, one of the original gangster rappers, is doing Tide commercials and like auto protection, whatever commercials. It's like, are people not allowed to grow? Are characters not
Right.
allowed to
That's what
grow?
we-
It's like Boba Fett's old and got a little bit of a dad bod, and it's like, maybe he's maybe he's figured some things out in life.
Mhm.
Style thing, because we just saw it. I like that they end with the illustrations like to open the credits as they did with Mandalorian. I just like that style choice a whole lot.
Yeah.
Anyway,
The concept art and everything.
No,
yeah.
yeah, it kind of shows how close they stuck to stuff and um how much the vision that they're seeing is making it onto the screen, which is good. I mean, some stuff changed. It looks like the back to tank originally was vertical. They went to more of a horizontal waterbed model, but some stuff stuck, like the chase scene, the shield scene, um, and the Tusken Raiders, and the monster. Even the monster looks very much in the concept design as we got to see it at the end.
So the episode is the series is still wide open. We still have no idea what's going on except for he's trying to be, he's trying to take control of the underworld of Mos Espa, I suppose, of Tatooine.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we still really don't know where this is all going. It seems like this first episode was just let's get all the junk out of the way, or let's answer as much as we can up front. Which, like I said, there's a, it's kind of like Dave and I were talking before about how we were doing this episode. We're going to do this for each of the episodes of Book of Boba Fett. Our podcast is just going to be a watch party like this, so we can talk about what's on the screen. But there's pros and cons to doing that, and there's pros and cons to what they were doing with, like I said, that choice. Do we show all the flashbacks and get all that stuff away up front? The pro is that it gets people, to shut up about how to get out of the Sarlacc pit. Fine, here's how he got out of the Sarlacc pit. Or how did he get with the Tusken Raiders? Fine, here's how he got with the Tusken Raiders. So there's the pro to that. The con is that it makes for kind of when you are, and yes, my expectations were up, but Disney's been doing a good job at hyping this show, Book of Boba Fett, and the behind the helmet and all this stuff, and then the first thing we get is him walking through the desert looking for water. I mean, you can see how some people are like, "Whoa, really? Let's get to the story, a little bit of the story." So,
I think the characterization parts of it are again, if somebody's critiquing that, is again, I think that's where Star Wars fans tend to lose the plot. We saw so much of that with Luke. Oh, this isn't the Luke that I knew or admired or loved. And again, it's the same thing here. It's like, well, Boba Fett, the Boba Fett that they showed us in Mandalorian was a different Boba Fett than we saw previous to that point. And when we watched those episodes in real time, we debated, is he going to double cross Mando? Is Boba Fett going to double cross him because he's a bad guy, And I think, like, again, the fact that he didn't do that, and the fact that he was an honorable man in all of those interactions, spoke to the fact that he had changed. So it's like, well, how and why and when did he change? And so now let's address that and then try to explain it in an intelligent manner. And I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Those sorts of changes don't just occur and you just have to accept them. They're actually, this first episode dealt with that stuff, and I really did appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think but to the pacing, I think it's probably going to follow a lot in regards to Mandalorian season 1, where we may have started, or maybe more season 2, where we start off a bit slowly and then things ramped up towards the end. Because as far as I know, this is only going to be one season, so it's only going to be the 6 or so episodes that we're going to get. And so I expect it to next week maybe get a little bit more, and then week 3 will get a little bit more speed up or more action. So it's going to be interesting to see how they balance it out. And it's kind of the difficulty of making a TV show versus making a movie. This started out as it was one of the Star Wars story ideas that was announced back when Rogue One came out. There was the whole idea of we're going to get a Obi-Wan movie, we're going to get a Boba Fett movie. Well, now we're going to get an Obi-Wan series, and we're getting the Boba Fett series. So
and that's
there's a different dynamic to make.
And that's a very good point, because I've thought about this with these Disney Plus series. It's kind of like Hawkeye. And I was thinking about this, is that we see, like I said, for Book of Boba Fett, let's say 6 episodes of roughly a half hour, a little bit more than a half hour each. And it's like, And so there's that, beginning and end, and you're either satisfied, not satisfied, whatever. But you can't think of it as individual episodes. That's why I said it's basically you are getting a 3-hour movie and you just watch the first half hour of it. You know what I mean? And it's like, so you can take a lot of movies where there's going to be a half hour of walking through the desert and looking for water. And then things kick up, in the second half hour or whatever. And it's not as abrasive, I suppose, as if it was you get to watch the first half hour of a movie and then you get to go, you don't get to watch the rest of it for another week. You know what I mean? So it gets you time to think about if you were happy, mad, whatever. So I think that's, like I said, we talk about leveling our expectations. That's why I'm not going to start saying this is a filler episode. I'm not going to say, or this, that, or the other is a filler episode, or, until you can look at the entire arc of, what's the story from episode 1 to episode 6. So
I also want to make one more point about the characterization here, which is that at this moment of the story, we've assumed that he has learned about becoming a more just and fair ruler and trying to bring that to the table, right? And so how is he rewarded for taking that approach? He was, by the end of the episode, he's unconscious in a back the tank after getting beat senseless. So it's possible that he may adjust his approach over time because he's seen at this point what kindness is getting him on this really harsh planet full of harsh individuals. And I would kind of expect that to for him to kind of find his way through this and adjust on the fly some.
Well, and that's part of what the story, I think, has to show us. It's not just how Boba Fett has changed, but how the changes that he's trying to enact are both repelled or cause a reaction from the underworld that he's trying to rule. Because that's part of the dynamic. It's, he's trying to come at being the new boss from a different way that Jabba or even Bib Fortuna did. So we're going to see, that's why we're getting this reaction where those guys on the rooftop may have been the company that the mayor's major domo said was going to come and visit him. They may have been a rival for his title. They may be just people looking to get out from underneath the crime boss's thumbprint. So there's going to be a lot of different factions, both aligning with himself and against him. Whether that's Jennifer Beals, bar owner, or somebody, the mayor, or so we're going to see these dynamics at play with Boba and Fennec, who are not necessarily all going to be on his side, but they may be aligned with him for business purposes. So again, different story than what we normally get in Star Wars, where at some point, eventually, the choice of good versus evil is at the core. This might be a question of more about doing things with respect and toughness versus being a ruthless, horrible, vicious crime boss. So there might be more. This might be the greatest story Star Wars has ever told.
Wow. I don't know how to follow up with that. That sounds like a good place to end this first episode. Actually, the grayest story that Star Wars has ever told. And my dog has just woken up and starts licking my hand. Anyway, but okay, just real quick, just around the horn. I said I was underwhelmed the first time I watched it. I said didn't hate it, didn't even dislike it. I was just underwhelmed. One word after you got done watching it, your reaction, just one word. Dave?
Encouraged.
Okay. Fredo?
Whelmed.
Whelmed. Not under, not over. Can you ever just be whelmed?
I was whelmed.
I think that's fair. So we'll see what comes next week. Like I said, I think the story is still wide open. So the past is prologue, as they say. We didn't make mention of the title, Stranger in a Strange Land. I've heard a lot of people talking about how that's a reference to a sci-fi novel, and also it's a reference from Exodus in the Bible, from the Moses story.
It's originally a passage from Exodus in the Bible, but it's sci-fi. It's best known because it's the title to Starship Troopers author Robert Heinlein. His most famous book after Starship Troopers is Stranger in a Strange Land, which is about a person who was born in Mars during a failed mission, returns to Earth after growing up in Mars, and is trying to figure out his place in the world because he's grown up away from people, has no idea. And so he's trying to connect in a different way. And of course, given his fame, his notoriety, his fortune, there's a lot of different people trying to pull at him, trying to get him to go his way. And he ends up going through a different journey where at one point he becomes like a celebrity, he becomes a preacher, he becomes disillusioned. So it's an interesting title to give the first episode just because it posits the idea that Boba Fett starts out as a bounty hunter who's not trying to be a crime boss, but that may not be where he ultimately ends up.
And I would encourage everybody. There are two cool, two YouTube channels that I tend to go to after I watch an episode because they do all these like breakdown of, and references and Easter eggs and stuff like that. It's New Rockstars and Screen Crush. And there's a lot of references in this. I mean, they took some shots directly from old movies. There's a lot of references in this first episode. I encourage you to go check out those channels. It's really kind of interesting. So where we don't have the time nor the means to do that, that's what those people get paid like full-time money for. But yeah, so it's kind of like the scene where Boba Fett's getting all of his armor put on. I'm trying to remember they tell what movie that is directly taken from. But anyway, I digress. You can go to those two channels. So cool. All right. Well, it is New Year's Eve. And so we're not going to ask about New Year's resolutions because you still have another about, 12 hours to, do whatever the hell you want. So we'll ask the next episode what your resolution is. But I hope you guys have a wonderful New Year's Eve. Dave, are you going to let the kids stay up until midnight or do they have to go to bed?
They usually don't have a lot of interest. Maybe Liv will, but we'll see.
And does Lucy like the fireworks?
No. But actually she's pretty well adjusted with that stuff. You know how dogs are. They're usually skittish about that, and she does okay.
Luna gets mad. She doesn't get scared. She gets mad. She gets this bark of she's like the Karen on the block telling people that they're not supposed to be lighting fireworks off, in the city. She just gets mad. So
she's going to call their manager.
So Fredo, are you gonna ring in at midnight, or are you gonna celebrate New York New Year's?
I'm probably gonna stay up and celebrate our midnight, not New York's midnight. Although I have an early morning tomorrow because I have a soccer match that kicks off at 6:30 in the morning. So,
all-nighter, baby. All-nighter.
So yeah, but I may do that. I may just stay up all night, watch my soccer match, and then crash and sleep all Saturday, all New Year's Day. So
that's never a good idea because you'll just feel like garbage on Sunday as well, and Monday will be even worse. So
that's true. So I may just set my alarm clock, fall asleep at 2:00, get up at 6, watch my match, crash, and try to hope that solves the problem. But yeah, so I'll stay up and ring in the New Year. Or try to do it safely and away from the majority of humanity.
Well, here's to a very happy New Year, and we're not even going to talk about the Saints, and and here's to another 100 episodes. So,
Yay.
So with that, we will say, what'd you say, Fredo? Sorry.
We'll get Troy McClure to wish us a happy 200th episode.
There you go. So with that, we will say, who dat?
Who dat?
Who dat?
And everybody have a wonderful New Year and have a great rest of your day.
McConkey.